Hello, and welcome to the Global Antitrust Institute's online lecture series. I'm James Cooper, professor at Antonin Scalia Law School and the director of the program on economics and privacy. And today we'll be covering the economics of consumer protection. So, while competition law is concerned with assuring that markets remain competitive and consumers can enjoy the benefits of competitive markets, consumer protection law is focused on assuring that markets are free from deception and fraud. In this manner, the root of most consumer protection problems are really informational problems. So, we're going to be looking today at information markets and how possible market failures in information markets can lead to problems in the product markets. So, for our roadmap, what we're going to talk about is the demand for information. We're going to talk about the supply of information. And then we're going to talk about how the equilibrium outcomes in these information markets can have impacts on the product markets. These are consumer protection problems. We will then look at how both the public sector, through government intervention, and the private sector have come up with solutions to deal with these asymmetric information problems. All right, so let's get started. First, let's talk about the demand for product information. Why do we collect product information as consumers? Well, it's it bottom it's to increase the odds that our ultimate purchase decision matches our preferences. So we can go and shop and see if we can find a better price for the good or service that we know we want. Or we can do research and read reviews to see if a service provider, for instance, a plumber or repairman or a restaurant, is any good. We do this to avoid that moment that we've all experienced when we find out that we've paid too much for something because we found it cheaper somewhere else, or we end up eating at a bad restaurant, or going to a mechanic that we're pretty sure ripped us off. This is why we gather information to avoid these problems. But the question comes, how much time do we spend investigating these investigating these markets before we participate in them? Well, if we're rational, like if we're rational, and like we do in most consumers and firms do in most instances, we weigh the marginal benefits against the marginal costs, which is the we already talked about what the marginal benefit is of gathering additional marketplace information. That's really, as we gather more information, we increase the odds that this purchase that we're making is going to match our preferences. Well, what is the marginal cost of engaging in gathering more marketplace information? Well, it's the opportunity cost of the time to gather and process this information. And we could spend a lot of time gathering information about all the products that we go out and purchase on a daily basis. We could shop around for a cup of coffee to make sure that we're getting the best price. And we could read lots of reviews, but instead, most of us just go down to the Starbucks or other coffee shop on the corner and buy a cup of coffee. We don't spend a lot of time doing that. Otherwise, we'd be paralyzed and it would be irrational. So, what does this mean? At the end of the day, this means that most of us enter into marketplace transactions without perfect information, but this is okay. This is called rational ignorance. We are all rationally ignorant of a host of attributes of the products and services that we're searching. Uh, will never drive the odds of making a mistake down to zero as long as the marginal cost of information is positive. And in fact, it would be irrational to do so. Now, of course, we're going to spend more time on large and important purchases like houses or cars. And we're going to spend time on that because the cost of a bad match, say a bad school system, a horrible commute, a house that's rotting with termites, a car that's a lemon, those getting out of those mistakes, those are costly. So we're going to spend more time to try to avoid those mistakes. However, the cost of purchasing a toothbrush that doesn't turn out to be a good match for us isn't that high. All it really is the cost of a few dollars replacing the toothbrush. So again, we're going to rationally spend more time gathering information to reduce the odds that we make marketplace mistakes for large and important purchases than small purchases. Okay, so we've talked about the demand for information and the fact that consumers are likely to be rationally ignorant in most of the marketplace decisions that they make. But we also know that producers are constantly providing us with information about their product through marketing and through advertising. All you have to do is go online, any website, you see advertisements popping up. These are firms who are trying to convince consumers to purchase their product by giving them information. And as we'll see, there are strong incentives to reveal a lot of information. Of course, it's clear that if your product is the best, for instance, if you've won Motor Trend Car of the Year, you're not going to hide that. That's going to be front and center in all your advertising. But what if you didn't win Motor Trend Car of the Year, but nonetheless have a pretty good car that's gotten some good reviews? Are you going to just be quiet about that? No, you're not. You're not going to, because what's going to happen if you don't say anything about the positive reviews that your car's gotten? Well, consumers aren't going to be able to tell your car apart from the worst car that's out there, because the person with the worst car doesn't really have anything to brag about. If you don't say anything about your car, consumers are going to assume that your car is no different than the worst car. This is what is called an important result in economics. It's called unraveling. And what it means is that consumers tend to assume the worst from silence. So if you say nothing about a product attribute, well, consumers rationally assume that you probably have nothing good to say about that attribute, that you're just as bad as everyone else who's not talking. So let's give an example. Do you think Ben and Jerry's advertises the caloric content of its ice cream? Well, let's see. No, not surprising. This is an advertisement for Ben and Jerry's. What do they advertise? The fact that it's delicious. 90% more and those happy cows in the background. So they're not going to advertise the how many calories they have. What do you assume from that? Well, let's compare the Ben and Jerry's ad to one of their rivals. They show up on the shelf right next to Ben and Jerry's. If you go and look in the freezer section, Breyers, Delights. What do they have front and center on their carton? They have the calories per pint. That's not even per serving. Calories per pint of their ice cream. So it's marketed. It's next to Ben and Jerry's. Ben and Jerry's pint is saying nothing. Breyers is announcing that they have low calories. Why do you think Ben and Jerry's has nothing to say? Well, let's take a look. Ben and Jerry's calorie per pint: vanilla 920, chocolate 1,000, mint chocolate cookie 1040, milk and cookies 1080. That's a lot more than their competitor here, Breyers. So you can see, if you're a consumer and you're looking at two pints of ice cream, one that has calories front and center and one that just talks about how delicious it is, what are you going to assume from the silence? You're going to probably assume that they don't have anything good to say about calories, and you'd be right. Now, you could imagine, say, a third ice cream, say Edie's gets into this marketplace and they have a ice cream that their chocolate ice cream, let's say it has 400 calories per pint. Not as good as Breyer's, but way better than Ben and Jerry's in calories. What do you think that they're going to do? Are they going to be quiet about their calories there on the shelf in their advertising? Probably not. Because if they don't say anything and they're sitting there next to Ben and Jerry's, consumers will assume that this new Edie's ice cream has similar calories to Ben and Jerry's. So they will rationally provide some information to consumers to let them know that they're actually low cal compared to Ben and Jerry's. And maybe they're not as good as Breyers, but they're certainly going to be better for you than Ben and Jerry's. All right. So we just saw that there are really strong incentives to reveal information for suppliers to reveal information about their products, even if it's not that they're the best. But there are also some reasons to think that we don't get full revelation of product attributes. And so there's going to be some information, asymmetric information in the marketplace. So one of the problems is the public good aspect of information. What do I mean by that? Is that information is non-rival in consumption. Just because I know something about a product doesn't mean that you can't know something about a product. In fact, an infinite number of people can know it. That is, all types of information has this non-rival aspect to it, and this can lead to a free rider problem. So here I'll give you an example. This is an ad about pork, the other white meat. This was put out um, back in the 90s when there was a big concern with fat content and how red meat, diets rich in red meat, were probably not very good for you. So chicken was the white meat that people were turning to. Well, pork wasn't, they weren't as healthy in the sense of lower, they didn't have as low a fat content as most chicken. Nonetheless, they were a lot less fat than especially a kind of a lean pork chop or a pork loin had a lot less fat than most beef. So they had strong incentives to reveal that. The problem is that you're not giving, if you come out as a pork producer and say you're in a large pork producer, even you're Smithfield, and you do an ad that says pork, the other white meat, it's just as good as chicken or almost as good as chicken, it's much better than beef, you'll gain. But who else will gain? All of your competitors as well. It's a free rider problem. The information is out there, everyone can enjoy it, including your competitors. So what does this mean? It reduces incentives to provide this information. And in fact, this this advertisement was not supplied by an individual pork producer. It was supplied by a pork trade association where they all got together, contributed, and put out this advertisement, knowing that it would benefit everyone. So there are also intermediaries, third party intermediaries who provide information, and consumers who now can provide information online through reviews of Airbnb or through Yelp or um, Amazon. Uh, there is, again, because information is a public good. Once it's out there, it can be reproduced ad nauseum and or ad infinitum. So you again have this free rider problem, which means that, say, if a intermediary who supplies information, say like a Consumer Reports, if they cannot prevent copying, they can't capture the full value of the information they're providing. So there are reduced incentives to produce. There'll be an undersupply of that information. And the same thing, you can just think, how many Yelp reviews do you read as compared to how many Yelp reviews you create? I think for most people, the reading is much, much higher than the contributing. Again, it's a free rider problem. We do not go out, we could provide information for everything we consume and give that out to consumers, but and they could all benefit from it, but we don't because it's costly. And uh, we're not gonna get the benefit from it. Other people are. Um, so then there's also just the so this is there's the public good aspect of information, but there's also the problem of fraud. We know that there are some firms, and this is not just asymmetric information, this is affirmatively lying about your product, saying it's better than it really is, or concealing bad attributes of your product. We know that fraud exists. And so the incentive to lie, the economic incentive to lie about your quality, is that the short run gain from the lie, saying it's better than it is, so therefore you can increase your demand and increase the price that you would otherwise get, is if that short run gain from the lie is greater than the long run cost that's going to come from giving up repeat purchases. Because what's going to happen as soon as the person you lied to actually finds out the true quality of your product, that this diet pill doesn't work as advertised, they're never coming back and they're going to tell your friends not to come back. But if you can charge a high enough price for it, and that information dissemination is slow enough, if there's a lag between the time it takes the consumer to find out that you've lied to them, all of those things can contribute to making fraud actually pay. And so this is again because reputation isn't always going to be a perfect disciplining mechanism. This is again, and we'll talk about this, a reason to have a backstop of legal enforcement to where we can get fraud. We can go after fraudsters and make them pay for the consumer harm that they create to internalize this harm. So you might think, well, don't competitors have an incentive to correct the falsehoods? If a competitor, if there's a competing juice producer who's lying about how healthy their juice is, well, if you're competing against them, you're going to want to tell the world that, hey, this guy's lying. The juice doesn't really help the way you say it does. So, um, why might you lack an incentive to reveal that to the world? Well, you'll gain, but so will all the other competitors in the marketplace. So again, it's a free rider problem. The same thing that comes with the same problem about revealing generic information about a product. You get the same problems with correcting competitors. It's a free rider problem, so there are reduced incentives to provide that information to the marketplace. So what does this mean for consumers? What Because ultimately, what we care about is the product market impact of this. So if we can think of generic broadly two types of situations. We can have too little bad information. What does that mean? We don't know enough about the bad attributes. We overestimate how the quality of a good or service. What does that mean? We're going to purchase too much of a product. So, for instance, as I talked about before, exaggerated weight loss claims for a diet plan. We think it's better than it really is. There can also be the opposite situation. There can be too little good information, and that means we're going to purchase too little of the product. And that could be, here's an example, benefits from high fiber cereals. If there are not sufficient incentives or there are regulatory impediments to providing beneficial information about a product, then we won't know about it and we'll consume too little of it. So let's just look at this in a normal supply and demand diagram. So here we've got the market price, which we're going to assume just for the sake of simplicity is constant at P. And you've got a downward sloping demand curve, DAI, which means asymmetric information. And then you've got QAI, which is the equilibrium quantity with asymmetric information. So let's assume that this is the diet pill situation, that the diet pill advertises and markets itself with exaggerated claims of weight loss. Well, the demand for this diet pill is going to be DAI. But if you knew the truth about how effective it really was, not very effective, the demand for this pill would actually be DLQ, stands for low quality, and the quantity consumed would be QLQ. So what does this mean from a welfare perspective? How are consumers harmed? Well, every consumer from QLQ to QAI are purchasing the good at price P, but their value, as shown on the demand curve, is less than price P. So what does that mean? Well, that means that this this triangle here is dead weight loss. It's loss from overconsumption, where the marginal value is actually less than the price they have to pay. These consumers in a world of truth would not purchase this. So let's look at the flip side. Let's look at the flip side of this. Here we start off with our asymmetric information demand, but let's assume that this is a situation like the pork, where there are insufficient incentives to provide information about a health attribute of this good. So we end up the true demand, if we knew the health benefits of pork vis-a-vis beef, our demand would be DHQ for high quality. But we don't know that. So we're still consuming at QAI when If we had full information, we would consume at QHQ. And again, what's the consumer loss? Well, in this case, the consumer loss is this triangle, which represents the area, the consumers from QAI to QHQ who don't consume because they don't have correct information, but who otherwise would consume in a world of full information. So these are losses we worry about: overconsumption and underconsumption. So, what is another loss that we worry about from asymmetric information? Um, Another is adverse selection. And what this means at the end of the day is that we're going to have that in the limit, if we have an adverse selection problem, sometimes referred to as a lemons market, we can end up with lower average quality in the marketplace because the high quality producers are going to be driven out of the marketplace. So let's take an example here. We have a couple and they want to buy a used car. In particular, they want to buy this used BMW. This is what they want. So, what they're concerned about, though, because they don't know much about cars and they can't figure out by looking at the car at a dealership whether they're actually getting what they want, the nice new BMW convertible or a lemon. Looks like a BMW on the outside, but in fact, it may have some serious problems. So, what how do they make their decision? Well, first they think, okay, I'll pay $10,000, and I realize that is suspending reality here, but it makes the math easier. They'll pay $10,000 for the car they want, the used BMW that's in good condition. And if it were a bad car, they would be willing to pay 5,000. Their value is not zero, but let's assume that it would need about $5,000 worth of work to get it up to spec. So they would pay $5,000. They would pay $5,000 for the lemon. Again, this is what we would call in econ jargon an experience good because they can't tell ex ante. They cannot tell ahead of time whether they're buying a lemon or the good car because they until they actually buy it and drive it, and then they'll know after a couple months whether it is truly a good car or something that's gonna break down on them. So let's think about how this couple is going to make their decision. They don't know which is good or bad, but they've done a little bit of research, and they found that by reading reviews, and they think that about 80% of the time when you go to a car dealership and you buy one of these BMWs, you're actually getting what you want, but about 20% of the time they turn out to be lemons. So rationally, how do they figure out what they're willing to pay? Well, they look at the expected value of what they're likely to encounter. So there's a 20% chance that they're going to get a car worth 5,000 and an 80% chance they're going to get a car worth 10,000. What that means is the expected value of a car is 9,000. So rationally, when they walk into the dealer, they won't pay anything more than $9,000. Okay, that makes sense. So where's the problem? The problem can arise if the good car seller, the seller, is only willing to sell at a price that is greater than what the consumer is willing to pay. So let's assume that the dealer who has the good BMW and they know it's a good BMW, they will only accept $9,500 for their car. Well, in a world of full information, we'd have a bargain. The couple would pay 10,000. The dealer would be willing to accept 9,500. There would be some bargain, maybe 9,750. But in this world of imperfect information, this transaction doesn't happen because the good car seller cannot convince the couple that they're actually having a good car, that he actually has a good car. So what happens? They exit the market, and the only thing that's left is the lemons market. And this is what is called this is the an extreme form of the lemons market. This is based on work that George Akerlof did, eventually garnering a Nobel Prize for this work, showing how markets in the extreme can unravel when there's this adverse selection problem that derives from asymmetric information. All right. So here are all the problems that can come about through asymmetric information. Let's talk a little bit about the solutions. So first, there are public solutions. So some of the problems may arise from government restrictions on advertising. Here's an example. Before 1984, the FDA prevented food manufacturers from making health claims on their labels and in their advertising. So here, Kellogg's had a cereal that was really high in fiber, and they were not allowed to talk about that. And they did, but once those restrictions were relaxed, they were allowed to. And here's an example of an ad that they ran. They were actually allowed to tell consumers that I have a cereal high in fiber, and there's a link between fiber and reduced rates of colon cancer. So they're able to say that. What happens? The marketplace reacts by one, consumers get this information, they purchase more cereal with more fiber, and firms respond to this demand by actually increasing the fiber content of existing cereals and coming up with new cereals that have fiber. So this is one way you can solve this problem, because there could be government restraints that exist on giving out truthful information to consumers that's useful. So another way, and this is ubiquitous, is mandated disclosure. There's the Truth in Lending Act, the Care Labeling Act, RESPA, the Real Estate Settlement Protection Act. All of these are examples of government mandated disclosures in complicated transactions. Um, there's licensing. Okay, so licensing exists for professionals where it may be difficult for a consumer to figure out the quality ahead of time. So you think about doctors and lawyers; um, they take they take state mandated tests to see if they meet the minimum quality threshold to practice their profession in that state. And having passed, that gives consumers some gives consumers some ability, gives them information that they're at least some minimum quality. Now, of course, and it's beyond the scope of this lecture, licensing has expanded to a whole range of professions where there may not be an asymmetric information problem, but again, that's subject for a different time. And then finally, you've got consumer protection rules and enforcement. So there are a whole host of rules apart from disclosure that prevent um, prevent uh, firms from engaging in certain conduct that's likely to lead to deception. And you have a host of consumer protection laws that are enforced by, say, the Federal Trade Commission, state attorney generals, the CFPB. Again, this is to stop deceptive and fraudulent conduct in the marketplace. Okay, so those are the public solutions, but there are a host of private solutions as well. Why might there be private solutions? Anytime the deadweight law that we showed, the lemons markets, the high quality sellers that can't exist, this is all represents surplus that doesn't occur. And really, when there's a market failure, it's just a value creating transaction that doesn't occur. That means that there's a profit opportunity for somebody. There's a profit opportunity for somebody out there. So, what are some private incentives, that private solutions to these? Well, you may have been thinking when we talked about the lemons market, well, what about warranties? Yes, car manufacturers will offer warranties, and not just car manufacturers. A lot of manufacturers offer warranties, and that's a protection against. Okay, if I sell you a lemon, you can come back and I'll fix it for free. There's also screening and signaling devices. What are these? Well, a warranty is actually what we would call a signaling device. A signal is is information that that a producer can send to a consumer to try to convince them that they really do have the quality that they're promising to have, that they're not lying. So a warranty provides a consumer with an assurance, because if I'm selling you a lemon, I'm not likely to give you a warranty. When you go to the used car dealer lot and you see the as is cars, what does that tell you? It tells you if the dealership is not willing to stand by that car, there may be some sort of problem with it. It's a signal. Okay. Screening is the flip side. The screening would be the party without the information conducts a gives a test to the person who has the information, and to see if they pass the test. So an example in the marketplace that's used a lot are credit reports. when you go in to borrow money from a lender, you know more than the lender does about your credit worthiness, about what your job situation is, and other types of things that may impact your ability to pay. Well, a credit score allows a lender to look at that and kind of and figure out how much money they should lend you, whether they should lend you money at all, and what the rates they should charge. They're also third party certifiers. So you think about Motor Trend, they give out awards and ratings. You think about US News and World Report giving out rankings of colleges and law schools. There are a whole host of other third parties who will give a seal of approval. So, for instance, if you are an online merchant and you have a certain type of data security, then you may get a certain type of seal from a private regulatory organization. So, again, private sector is always willing, it jumps in to solve some of these asymmetric information problems. Why? Not out of the goodness of their heart, but because by solving these problems, they can create surplus, and if they get a part of that surplus, then that is a profit. So the market failure creates a profit opportunity for them to solve that. Well, thank you for listening to this lecture on the economics of consumer protection.